Welcome, friend, to Life and Liberty Radio. I'm David Householder, here to encourage your pursuit of happiness. You and I are partners, exploring our shared spiritual journeys. Together, we're dreaming and working for a free society. Tell others today about our adventure in faith and freedom. So breathe in, open your mind, lift up your spirit. Let's get started. This is episode 0013, and we're going to talk about a fascinating book called AntiFragile. And why that's important is because we need spiritually, socially, and emotionally to build an anti-fragile temperament, much like the characters in the Bible who were prevailing in the face of all kinds of terrible things. Well, this book, AntiFragile, was written by a man named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And Nassim Nicholas Taleb is a Christian from the Middle East. And the Christians in the Middle East had to be survivors because they've always been caught in the crossfire of all of these back and forth things between Israel and the Arabs and all of that. And it turns out there have been Christians in the Middle East for a long, long time, for centuries. So this is not some new thing. But the Christians in the Middle East tend to be very highly educated. They tend to be business people. And they also tend to be prevailing personalities because they never really figure prominently in the leadership of the nations of the Middle East. So Nassim Nicholas Taleb is a bit of a superstar in the investing world, made a lot of money, and then he wrote a book called The Black Swan. And that's a great book in its own right, but this one's a whole lot better, I think. AntiFragile tells us how to develop a prevailing personality. And so I think it's worth our reading. It's very dense reading. This guy's very intelligent, and he shows off once in a while. And he's certainly not understated in the sort of Midwestern sense at all. He's got this sort of bravado, this sort of hyperbolic way of talking, which we see often in the Middle East. We saw that with Jesus when he says, cut off your hand if it causes you to sin and pluck out your eye. So he's got that kind of vibe to him. He's very, very smart. So basically what he says is that when we are faced with devastation, when we are faced with a problem, we have three choices in response. Number one would be to be the fragile victim, to say, oh, this is horrible. Look what's happened to me. Woe is me. Why did this happen? Woulda, coulda, shoulda, all that kind of stuff. And we demand from other people help. Oh, could you please help me? And we're reminded when we were toddlers, we got that from our moms, where, oh, I'm in trouble, Mom, come help me. And a lot of us never grow out of that. And chances are you've got a relative who drives you crazy in this way, because this relative is always a victim. And you don't look forward to seeing this person at Christmas or at New Year's, certainly. So that's number one, door number one. Be the fragile victim when faced with devastation. Number two, be the robust survivor, the person who puts your head down and gets through it. Just, is tough, and I'm going to get through this, dang it. I'm going to make this happen. Get through it. And so number one, fragile victim. Number two, the robust survivor. Number three is something he brings out, and there really isn't even a word for it. So he invents one, anti-fragile. If a robust survivor is neutral and a fragile victim is negative, this would be the antipole to fragile. Anti-fragile would be assertively anti-fragile, the polar opposite. Actually using misfortune to move yourself forward. Something or someone who thrives on disorder, who thrives on problems, who actually gets farther ahead because of problems than you would have had you not had those problems. In other words, growing more from the things that hurt us than the things that make us comfortable. And we all know, looking back at our lives, the times we grew the most were the times that were the most challenging and devastating, and the things that broke us and the things that humbled us. And so people that are anti-fragile welcome storms in life, look forward to them thinking, this is a chance to take that next step forward, take another step toward freedom, towards personal liberation, towards freedom from our circumstances. And I would just like to add, there's great Bible characters here. And at Robinwood Church, we are walking through all of these different Bible characters who are prevailing personalities. And we're going to introduce you to a couple of them in just a moment. This is your host, David Householder. Say, if you're ever in Southern California, we invite you to come and join us personally at Robinwood Church in Huntington Beach. You can find us at robinwoodchurch.com. We're a unique spiritual community with worldwide influence. Come join us. So in Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book, AntiFragile, he talks about people who prevail through misfortune, who get farther ahead from misfortune, who do better with a headwind than with a tailwind. And I'm going to bring forward a couple of characters. One of them is Ruth from the Hebrew Bible, from the Christian Old Testament. Ruth was a Moabite woman, and there's a little verse at the beginning of this very short book. You can read it in just a few minutes. At the very beginning of this book, it mentions that Ruth had been married for 10 years, and then her husband dies. Now, this is devastating in the Middle East. There's no social welfare situation. And, when your spouse dies, that loved one, that primary relationship, it's absolutely devastating. It's devastating for a husband when you lose your wife, when you lose children, when you lose parents. Those people that are in a primary relationship with you, when you lose that person, it completely reorients who you are. It redefines who you are. So she could have been a fragile victim and said, "Woe is me," and sat in sackcloth and ashes and asked people to comfort her and spend the rest of her life being a victim. Or number two, she could have been a robust survivor and just stuck it out and just see how long she could live through it. But she chose number three, to be anti-fragile. First thing she did was said, "Hey, I've lost my husband of 10 years. Who do I know in my life? Well, I can't count on my sister-in-law, Orpah. She's turning back. And Naomi, my mother-in-law, my husband's mother, is my primary relationship. So I'm going to stick to that relationship." Turns out Naomi wanted to move back to her home country, so Ruth had to go live in a foreign country with Naomi. But she put her relationships first. And so when you're faced with devastation, it's always a good idea to put your relationships first. Of course, you have to build those go-the-distance relationships beforehand. So it's a good idea to be working on those, and she was. She was working on her relationship with Naomi. Where you go, I will go. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. May God do this and this to me if anything but death separates us. I'm going the distance with you, Naomi. You are a non-disposable relationship. So number one, she went after the relationships. Number two, she's a hard worker. She's been married 10 years and goes and works in the field in the lowest position possible, below minimum wage, and just starts gathering up barley corn. So there she is, working hard and getting a reputation for it. And if you've ever hired people, you notice those people who work hard. You do, I do. In a minute, and within a few days, she's getting promoted. She's getting noticed by Boaz, the big boss, the guy who's sort of in charge, the hero of the story. And I said, "Hey, this is good stuff." And she falls at his feet when he notices her, and she is grateful. She's grateful. She's had a rough time. She's lost her husband. She's working for minimum wage. She gets noticed, and she's grateful. Gratefulness is the chocolate of the emotions. Gratefulness changes everything. If you go through life grateful, or even just through the day or through an hour grateful, it's going to change your entire temperament. Number four, direct asking. She went right after Boaz the next day and told him exactly what she wanted in a very direct way. "This is what I want. I want you to do this for me. Here's your next steps." And it worked. And she ended up way ahead of where she was before she lost her husband. She ended up being in the royal line of Judah, which became the royal line of the nation of Israel, which became the genealogy of Jesus, for goodness sake. King David was right down the line from her, a foreigner who worked hard, stuck with her relationships, went through life grateful, and directly asked for what she wanted. Well, the truth is, when we lose one of those key people in our lives, it leaves a devastating vacant lot right next to us, where there used to be a beautiful building. Now, that's a tragedy. We weep for that, and we cry for that, and that's normal. That's normal. But a faith-filled person in time doesn't say, oh, that's a vacant lot. A faith-filled person says, a vacant lot. My life's been too full. Right now it's not. There's room to grow, room to live, living room here, a place to build. I think of the World Trade Center. And the World Trade Center is a devastating scar in the middle of lower Manhattan. And I was there right after it happened and was able to walk right onto the site early in the morning before sunrise. And the smell and the stench and the smoke were still there. And I thought, this is horrible. This is horrible. This will never be made good. And you go back there now, and it's one of the most beautiful, holy, spiritual places on the face of the earth, with the waterfalls and the names and this soaring tower, the Freedom Tower, at 1776 feet in honor of the Revolution, the American Revolution. And it's become a national centerpiece. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing that those people died, but devastation comes, and people grow through it, and they prevail through it, and great things happen. Loss makes room for something new. In a moment, we're going to talk about another prevailer, and his name is Noah. Have you read The Blackberry Bush? At the moment the Berlin Wall falls, a boy and a girl are born on opposite sides of the world. Did they share a destiny? Do we all share the same destiny? Come on a treasure hunt through the landscape of your soul. BlackberryNovel.com. More than likely, you're at least somewhat familiar with Noah and the Ark. It's not a totally foreign idea to most people. It's this ancient story of a man named Noah and his 3 sons and their families, and how a great flood came and they went into this gigantic boat full of animals, 2 by 2, and they survived the great flood and restarted the human race. But I'm not going to tell the story the way you heard it in Sunday school. I'm going to start with the devastation after the flood. Perhaps you saw the photographs and film clips and TV things and YouTube of the devastation of the tsunami in Japan recently. And it is just gut-wrenching to watch what happened there. Multiply that by a lot, and you run into the whole, what he would have found at the end of the flood. When the waters receded, can you imagine 100 tsunamis and all of the devastation and the death around, and to know you're the last one left? I can't even imagine what that would feel like. And the truth is, this story is most likely based in a true geological story. When the Ice Age ended, the waters of the Mediterranean rose quickly and poured over what is now the Bosporus, where Istanbul, Constantinople is, and dashed into the Black Sea, and did so in the space of just a few days at the force of hundreds and hundreds of Niagara Falls. And this was a thriving civilization in that area, and it was covered. And those people in boats were looking from side to side and could see nothing but water. And the Bible story doesn't say it covered the whole earth. It says it covered the land. And it certainly did cover the land, haaretz in Hebrew, as far as you could see. And for them, that was their whole world. That's all they knew at the time. They didn't know there was such a place as Los Angeles or Orange County or even the Western Hemisphere. So for them, their world went underwater. And when the waters receded, I cannot even think of the devastation that kind of waterfall and wall of water would have created. It's a miracle the ark did not capsize 100 times over and get ragdolled in sort of an undertow of current. So here the boat lands, and you face the devastation. And there's a rainbow. And you think, that's interesting. And so what Noah did was he planted a vineyard and got drunk. And I'm not condoning getting drunk, but he got so drunk he was naked and drunk. Now, Bible characters are not exactly stained glass characters, and this is not a part of the Bible story you learned in Sunday school, but it's true. Got drunk, got naked, and all kinds of bad stuff happened because he was devastated. And you don't want to encourage people to get drunk like that and lose control, but you certainly can explain it, and I'm sure all of us would be tempted to do something